do it on when I do it on Facebook, it's not helping me to monetize, you know?
Okay.
So doing it on YouTube is better, but you know, it's going to take a long time to build it. Do it on when I do it on
Hmm.
Facebook, it's not okay. So there we go. Uh,
Okay.
close. So now it's on YouTube now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share this. I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to share this on the Facebook Sync Summit page. So just give me a second,
Okay.
and that will okay. People are coming in to sign up last minute now, which is fine. I'm happy about that. Okay, so let me just put this on here. All right. Let me just finish this. Okay, right now, catch the stream here or join us on Zoom. Okay. Okay, let's put that here. And then what are you going to do for me here? You're going to do nothing. So here's what we'll do. Bear with me. It's just going to take me another second because I want to get this on our Facebook page. And there we go. Okay, so okay, you know what? Hold on a second. I have to edit this so that it's not doing that. Edit this, take that away. Don't do that, machine. Okay, there we go. Now it should show the feed. Okay, here we go. And then we'll get started. We've got about,
But I stay on Zoom, right? I don't
yeah,
need to
yeah,
do
yeah. You
anything.
stay on Zoom for sure. You stay on Zoom. You don't go anywhere.
Okay.
Okay, so people can see this now. The feed is there. That's good. And now that's going. So now we can get started. Okay, perfect. Here we go. Ah, I don't want to do that. Stop recording. Okay. And then start recording. All right, now we're going to get started. Fantastic. All right, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. This is great. I am so glad to see all of you on the Sync Cafe today. And today we're gonna have a discussion a little bit about the importance of rights. We're going to talk a little bit about how this integrates into your metadata, why it's important for you to have your writer's information, your publisher's information correct, how you should do that inside of your metadata. And we'll also talk a little bit about how people get paid from a sync. So we're going to cover a few different things today. And to join me on this journey with us today, I decided I'd recruit my good friend who is the director of Music Export Poland and a musician and a board member of the Performance Rights Organization of Poland, Marek Hodja. Marek, thank you for taking the time tonight to join us. How are you today?
Well, I'm fine. Thank you, Mark, for inviting me for this panel. In this webinar, will represent the professional side of synchronization business, because you represent music supervisors and professionals from this side. Probably I am the one who should represent the music creators side, but we both know how important metadata is, so we don't need to convince ourselves. But I'm very keen to talk to you about some issues from perspective of music creator.
I think that that's great. And I think that, this is something that you have worked through a lot with with your clients. And your clients are basically, I would say, in a larger sense, everybody who's part of the Polish PRO. So
Yeah, but they are not clients. I'm a songwriter and composer, and where I served as a board member of Polish PRO ZAIX, I was elected by my colleagues to this position from my other colleagues who are songwriters and music composers. So these are my colleagues, and even now when I run Music Export Poland, and I'm also chairman of association of film music composers called Space. I'm still elected by my friends, by my colleagues. So I serve to them as a kind of activist now.
that's amazing. And you and I have worked together on songwriting camps and panels
Yeah.
over the years, and we'll talk about that as well as get into the presentation that I'm going to give and the talk that we're going to have about rights and clearances. But before we do that, why don't you give everybody an introduction to you as a musician, first of all, because I'd like people to know that about you, but also give everyone an introduction to Music Export Poland and also to Zykes and to Space and some of the other work that you do on the business side to help to empower all of the musicians who are your peers and your colleagues in Poland, but also all over the world, because you're not just working with Polish musicians, you're working with musicians across the globe.
Well, I started working in music business in '80s when I was engaged as a rock vocalist to a metal band. But I was elected to the board of Polish PRO called ZAIX, and I spent there 10 years. And when I was board member, I was always involved in international issues, kind of foreign ministry in the collecting society. And then the idea of establishing Music Export Office came to my mind with help of Polish Ministry of Culture. They asked me to convince the board to establish foundation Music Export Poland. I was able to make it. Then I step out from my position in ZAIX because it seems for me to be interesting thing to run this foundation. So 8 years ago, I started to run foundation, and 2 years ago, in Poland, we saw that we need association for film music composers. In the foundation, I started to organize songwriting camps, and then I understood that maybe in the world where so many songwriting camps are organized, and thousands of songs are laying on hard disks and they will be never released, I understood that maybe sync business is more efficient for songwriters. So then I invented the idea of sync camp that you were a few times part of it. The sync camp is similar to songwriting camp that we create composers teams, consists of 3 composers each team. We have 5, 6 teams in every songwriting camp. We invite music supervisors like you and other guys who bring real briefs, and then composers have one day to create a piece of music. It's much more effective because I found that now in music industry, when you are a music creator, uh, there is not so much money in a streaming business. I mean,
Of course.
you need to have millions of streams on Spotify to earn some money. Maybe the profession of just songwriter, not artist, just songwriter is gone forever, because it's very hard to earn some money on being only songwriter. Like in the past, the guys like Bart Bacharach or others, they were just songwriters, or yeah. And I found that in audiovisual business, there are still a lot of money to spend for music, like budget for in movies or in advertisement. uh, industry where they still need music. So I found it more effective way. So when I started to organize sync camps and being much closer to film music composers, then came idea of establishing SPACE, Society of Polish Audiovisual Composers. So I have two hats, but they are connected somehow because we can make many common activities.
That's wonderful. And I'm really glad that you, as somebody who has been working for the rights and the opportunities for artists in Poland, developed sync specific competencies, both with the sync camps and with the Society of Composers, because having a distinct society for audiovisual composers, I think, is important because that then allows people who are working in film or television or advertising to say, okay, there's a group of people who do this day to day that I can possibly recruit and evaluate to work with me. That's something that we don't have here in the U.S. as a
Yeah, I know.
competence, as a group or as a competency from our performance rights organizations. It's I think it's a really great it's a really great service that you're doing. Now,
Yeah, I can tell you more that as a space, we are member of European umbrella organization for Association for Music Creators.
yeah,
It's called EXA, European Composer and Songwriter Alliance. This organization gathers associations from around Europe, and we have more than 30,000 music creators in organization when we calculate all members of all the organizations that are members of EXA. So we are quite strong lobbying body in Europe, in European Parliament, because we can influence, we can lobbying in favor of music creators in Europe.
that's amazing. And it makes me so envious because here in the US, there's not really an organization like that to help artists. It's
I
really
know.
much harder for artists here. And I would also say, I can also say from my Japanese experience, Japan is more like the US. There is an organization that does a little bit of help. I think they're going to do more because the prime minister is a musician, but and that's the first time, but she's a musician. So she's
Uh-huh.
probably going to take it more seriously. But, you know, I feel like our artists don't get the same level of support that,
Yeah, I know.
countries give. And it's very sad. But the point that I'm getting to with this is that when you do the sync camps, you don't limit it just to Polish artists. You actually bring in artists from the United States, from Mexico, from Japan, from Korea, as well as from all over Europe. Now, my question for in regards to that is twofold. The first question is, why, as a Polish rights organization, are you opening up the opportunities to people like a Japanese songwriter or an American songwriter or a Mexican songwriter to be a part of something that you are doing primarily for your artists? And number two, how does somebody get involved with this if they're an artist or they're a songwriter? Tell us about that.
Okay. The first answer is, for me, the most interesting genres of music were created in the regions when different cultures were mixed. For example, Balkan culture is very interesting for me because it's influence of Turkish traditional music and Balkan music. For example,
Yeah,
let's look at flamenco. It's Arabian and Spanish music. We have very rich tradition in Poland because we were a country influenced by Jews, by Turkish, even Turkish traditional music and Mongol music like Genghis Khan in the past. And this part of the music still remains in Poland. Look at US, jazz and all the blues and other genres of music was were created by mixing of different culture when black people came from Africa to US, and they mixed with French marches, military marches. It was jazz at the
yeah.
end. So this is the reason, because I deeply believe that mixing of different approaches, different cultures can bring a great result. and how I'm working with foreign partners. This is kind of a reciprocal agreement that we invite, for example, Latvian film music composers to our camps, and then Latvian Music Export Office invites Polish songwriters or Polish film music composers to their camp. So this is the system that we work together.
That's
There are not
wonderful.
only Music Export Office, collecting societies, Artisius, the Hungarian collecting society, organizes songwriting camps. In November, SOZA, the Slovakian collecting society, organizes its own songwriting camps, and we have 2 slots for 2 Polish songwriters. So we keep working, like exchanging writers.
Excellent. And if somebody, like if somebody from the US wanted to get involved in this, what would be the next steps?
Well, I would count of being invited for American songwriting camps by a label or publisher.
Hmm. But in terms of the sing camps that you're doing, how do they, is there an opportunity for them to get invited?
Yeah, sure. We hosted, Canadian film music composers. We had guys from Mexico, from Japan, from Korea, and you can see how it can be effective because you create the kind of path for career of Japanese composer that you met in Poland, right?
Yes,
This is very interesting story. If you could briefly bring that story
absolutely.
back.
I'll tell you very quickly. You know, one of the things that I've been part of 2 of the songwriting camps. I hope to do a third one soon. Wink, wink. So I'd love to take part again. But the 2 that I did, they both had a mix of people from across Europe and across the world. The second camp included a Japanese songwriter and artist named Yui. That's her professional name, Yui. So we'll just go with that. And Yui I had never met before, but her and I started to talk as we went through the camp. I had my teams of people and I had them creating music for the briefs that I brought. And I kept in touch with some of them afterwards. Fast forward a few months, I was working on a project that was part of a series on Netflix called Bet. And that series had one part of it where they were looking for Japanese music. And a lot of the Japanese music that was being used was music that was licensed, that was existing music. So we were working on that. But then another part of it, we had the opportunity to present music that was created around the ideas around the show. So when there was something that came up that we thought, well, we could make something that could work for one of the different scenes, one of the scenes in that series, I got in touch with Yui, and I just said to her, Yui, you know, this, I think this is a great opportunity for you. I'm working with some producers and songwriters in New York to produce this song. And I think it'd be great if you could come in and do the vocals and work with the team. So we worked remotely between LA, New York, and Japan to put this together. At the end of the day, Yui ended up doing more than just singing in it. She also co-wrote some of the lyrics, and she worked on some of the melodies. So it was really an interesting integrated process. And then at the end of the day, we had a sync from it and everybody got paid and it was wonderful. But the lesson from all of that is because I was there and because she was there, we were able to make something happen after the event. And that's why when I look at these sync camps, I think that they can bring real value, even if nothing is happening from the music that we created at that event. Because, you know, I look back on the event and we created for my teams, I think, 4 different songs. And none of those songs were used. They might be used someday, but they weren't used.
Mhm.
But because of the relationships that we
Yeah.
built, I was able to later work with some of those artists. And also, I know that some of the people that were there with me were able to work with some of the artists too. We have people like Patty Carrera, my who works in the Latin market. Or we have from AG Sync, we had Christian who came in, and why am I forgetting the other person's name, Merrick? Who's the other person? Uh,
Roy Lidstone.
Roy, yes, Roy and Christian came in, and they've worked with a few people that they met at the
Yeah,
sync camps too. So these sorts of things are very meaningful. And as I'm talking to you about this, I know that we're not talking yet about metadata, but we will.
yeah,
But when we're talking about this, I'm thinking to myself, I really need to put together my own sync camp and do this sort of thing. Maybe we'll do it like after our event in Los Angeles. Maybe we'll do a day or two where we do a similar sort of thing where we bring together some composers along with some music supervisors and have them create music for specific briefs, because it's really useful. Like, the reason I'm going to say it's really useful is not just because you're doing these briefs. Maybe something will happen with those briefs, but
hmm,
you're spending time with the music supervisors and the decision makers. And because you're spending time with them, now they're going to know you. They're going to know you. They're going
yeah,
to know your music. And they're going to see you as somebody that they could possibly collaborate with in the future. And that, to me, is a lot of the reason that you do what you do, is not just what's happening then, but what can happen over
yes,
a period of time.
yeah, exactly. And the
Fantastic.
beauty, what the story brought when you, how many countries were involved in UE case? Poland, Japan, US, Canadian music supervisor, and Brazilian
And Brazilian
music
producer.
producer.
Yeah. So it was truly across the world. We had Japan, the United States, Canada, and Brazil all
Yeah,
taking part in this. And that's one of the things that's great about what we do, is that opportunities are truly global. And also the opportunities are global, but also the way that we work is global. We're able to all work together. It used to be, if you were doing an international collaboration, you had to wait for people to send things back and forth. Now you can work inside of a production environment online and work in real, almost in real time. Time zones are time zones. You can't change that, but you can work almost in real time now.
yeah.
It's amazing. But there's nothing like getting together. So I think I'm inspired to, build a sync camp into what we're doing with our LA event. So everybody stay tuned for that. I think we'll do something cool there. All right. So with that said, I'm gonna change subjects for a second. Um, we talked about sync and the importance of sync, and obviously, you are doing sync with the artists you work with because it's a place where they can make money. Now, from your perspective, what have you seen in terms of mistakes that artists and people that work with artists make in not describing, but confirming ownership information, confirming ownership information on things like split sheets, which is part of what we had to do when we worked together, is make sure the split sheets were done at the beginning, but also things like work for hire contracts, and also things like entering your information about your PRO, entering your writer and publishing information. Like, tell us your experience with that as an artist and as somebody from a PRO working with artists.
Well, I think the main reason is lack of awareness and knowledge among music creators. I don't know why it's so, but I remember the book written by Don Passman, All You Need to Know About Music Business. He's the guy
Right.
who writes the book, and this is a great book, updated every second year. Um, and this guy wrote these words that I was working with many industries like pharmacy, automobile industries, and music industries. I never saw the people from music business that are not aware how their business works. In other words, car mechanics or doctor knows much more about their business than musician. Why? because musicians usually want to play the music, and they want to be discovered because they are great. And the the winners will be those ones who are more aware, because I very often I bring an example of running restaurant. When you want to run restaurant, you have to rent the place, have the contract with power station, you need to hire chef, you need to buy forks, plates, and everything. When you serve, and you need to have great dish, you have to cook great. When you cook great, it doesn't mean that you can run great restaurant, successful restaurant. It's the same
That's
with
true.
music.
Yeah.
Your music is kind of like a great dish that you can cook, but what you need, all the environment. And the people from music world, I mean musicians, they are not aware. And I think my role is to make them aware in Music Export Poland and in space, because music is not enough. Every day more than 100,000 songs are uploaded to the streaming services, and it's very hard to be discovered. And putting correct metadata to the files is one of the way to help other people like music supervisors to discover you.
100%. 100%. And what have you, from your from where you sit as a person at the export office, person at the PRO, what have you done in order to help people to understand this better?
You remember the first day on the sync camp, when
Yes, of
creators
course.
send me tracks
Yeah,
after the first day of creation. There is always a track that is sent, and it's titled track one, just track one.
of
This
course.
always, and it's always good
That drives me
opportunity to
crazy,
make
right?
to
Right.
make them aware, to say what that means, track one. There is millions of tracks titled like this. How can I can you- how do you think you can be discovered? Maybe today it's easy to discover who sent me the track, but maybe in a week, me or supervisors who attend sync camp won't be remember what the track is. So this is the way how I can educate people. The other activities, there are discussion panels like we run during Film Music Festival in Krakow 2 years ago, Mark.
Mhm.
Um, we
Yes.
can make some education workshops. And in Space and Music Export Poland, we like to promote disco service for film music composers and songwriters also. You don't need to be a film music composer. Maybe you can be just songwriter, and your song can be used by music supervisors in some audiovisual productions. So I am planning together with Katrina, that I met in the panel that you organize in Canadian Music Week. So thank you, Mark, to connect me with Katrina from Disco. She will run advanced workshop, not basic workshop how to create account on Disco, but advanced workshop. And uh, professionals from Disco will check the accounts of space members, and they will advise them how to run it properly, how to increase opportunities in their accounts to make their music more discoverable. So this is kind of action that I'm planning now for rest of the year.
That's excellent. That is really excellent. And I'm glad that Katrina is working with you. She's a friend of the show and a friend of Sync Summit. So you know, we have her on, and some of the other people from Disco, as well as other companies. I want to be a little bit more, let's say, agnostic. We also work with Bridge Audio and
Mhm.
some of the others that are out there that are doing good work. So
Yeah, but it's hard to work with musicians, because there are just few of them who are interested in building their knowledge about other things that just composition. And in and now
that's
metadata becomes more important, because in the past, for example, look how many songwriters you have in one song. In the past, Bart Bacharach were sitting with Hal David or Elton John were sitting in the same room with Bernie Taupin, and they create a song. John with Lennon in one room, right? Right. But now look, I checked today Beyonce album, and in one song is 26 writers to one song. Can you imagine how many of
Yes.
how many participants we have now? Maybe we all should create one song together. It can it's crazy, 27 songwriters to one song, and then just imagine that you are music supervisor and you want to use that song in your production. You have to approach 26 songwriters or 26 publishers. The world is it's being more complicated than in the past, and it's a need for correct and reliable metadata in music files.
100%. And at the end of the day, sometimes a music supervisor has to clear a song that has 21 artists in it because
Yeah,
it's a big budget commercial and the money's not the problem, and the client says, I want this song. You're going to, whatever the money is, you just get it. So then they have to go out there and they have to find all of the information. And if they're attached to a major publisher, that's great. If they're not attached to a major
yeah,
publisher, that's a problem. And more important, if they can't find the metadata, it can take a long time for the music to be confirmed in terms of the rights. And that, when there's a big amount of money, of course, that problem will get solved. But a lot of the time, especially when we're talking about independent artists and smaller projects, having the right metadata can be the difference between the music getting licensed and the music getting pushed aside for something else that is easier to license. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation today, is to talk about some things that are important in making sure that your music is licensable. So I'm going to
mhm,
go through a few slides and I'm going to show you a couple of things. And also I'm going to share a document with you all afterwards that I think could be useful for you. Now, I think the first thing is that when we're talking about rights, when we're talking about making music licensable for sync, the first thing that you need to do is say, okay, if I have music that is something that I've written 100% myself and that I own 100% myself, that's easy. It's a one stop. I don't need to make a contract with myself. But if you have multiple songwriters, hopefully not 21, but let's say you have two or three songwriters, you have to, before you make the music, this is my opinion, but at the best, before you make the music, but directly afterwards, if not before, you need to put together a split sheet that shows what percentage of what person owns what. And it can be 50%. It can be, 50%, 20, it can be 50%, 50%. It can be 70%, 20. It can be a third, a third, a third. It doesn't really matter. You just have to have this done at the beginning. And the reason why this is important for you is for two reasons. The first reason is that you need to know, okay, who's getting paid what, and then how they're going to get paid. That's number one. Number two, you don't necessarily have to give this information to a music supervisor, but you need to have it available in case there's any problems. Because what can happen is, let's say that there's a song that gets licensed for something and it becomes a very noticeable big license. Now, if you don't have a split sheet, somebody who was in the studio who said, oh, you should do that, but you should do this melody or this part of the melody, can come in after the sync and then basically wreck your reputation, wreck the sync itself, and end up making the person or the people that license your music angry at you, and it ends up costing extra money. And you want to avoid that from the beginning. So it's always important to have a split sheet done if you have multiple writers. Now, for those of you that already know this, I apologize to you in advance for anything that I'm repeating in your knowledge, but I want to start with the most basic thing. And what is a good first step for everybody is to have a document that is a combination of a split sheet and also a combination of a document that assigns your right to represent the music that you created together for sync. So I have a document for that, which I will show you right now. And I will share this with everybody because I'm going to put this on my Dropbox while we're talking. And then you can download it and use it if the need comes up. So that's one thing. You can see this now. It's a very simple, it's a very simple document. This is just for the sound recording, but you can replace sound recording with composition and lyrics, and it's the same thing. This is just to break out sound recording, and then over here you can also put, I'll put this here. I will put this in here later and I'll send it to you. But basically, you can replace sound recording with composition. And here you can put composition instead of master. So I will probably actually what I'll do is I will give you two versions of this. And then here you just have the basic information of the person, their email address, and then you put in the percentages that each person owns. And then that's just guaranteeing all of that. This is the percentage of the rights that are owned and administrated here. And then from there, you have a music license authorization clause. So this basically says that the owners each individually are authorized to sign off, approve, or clear any and all non-exclusive master use licenses on behalf of all of the owners. This way, everybody is able to represent the music one stop. And that's important for you because that makes the life of the music supervisor and the person who's making the decision to license your music easier. So what I will do is I am going to take this document and I'll put it on Dropbox right now and send you the link. But I want to ask you, Merrick, from your perspective,
Yeah.
what have you seen in terms of people doing split sheets and how not doing them can be a problem for them? We talked about that a little bit, but talk about it a little more. Up there, he's muted. Okay, somebody came in the room, so we'll just wait for him for a second.
Sorry for that.
It's okay.
I was
Go ahead.
disconnected for a moment. Could you repeat the question, Mark?
Yes,
Sorry.
the question I had for you is this. We talked a little bit about spreadsheets from your point of view, or
Yeah.
split sheets from your point of view. But tell us a little more, like in terms of like split sheets from your experience as a musician, a composer, and also as somebody who works with musicians.
Well, the common way to make splits is, having is to have equal splits. When we have on songwriting camp or in sync camp 3 people in the room, we should share the equal. We should give equal shares to everybody. This is I call it Swedish way because it comes from Swedish songwriters that even
Yes, that is true.
even when somebody will come to the studio and just say something, let's make it and when this part of the music is placed to the song, this person will get equal share in the music. And I'm explaining to participants of my camp that if you think later on that someone doesn't deserve for this equal share, just try to avoid him or her in the next session. Don't work with this person if you think that contribution of this person is too high. But for this particular one day when we are sitting together in one room and we are working on one piece of music, the shares should be equal.
I agree with you. And one of the things that happened one time I was doing a class and I had done this on purpose. I basically said to everybody, okay, now we're going to do a cover challenge and I'm going to break you into teams. And I had a team leader who was a producer and then other people who were working on the project. And we had four different teams. And this was after I told everybody, you need to get your split sheets done at the beginning. But I left them as a good instructor would to do their own thing. And I worked with them on the creative parts of the process to make sure that they were shaping things in the direction that they wanted to for the cover. So the good thing about the cover is that they didn't have to worry about the publishing. That's one side. But when
Hmm.
we came to the sound recording, three out of the four groups didn't do their work when it came to split sheets at the beginning. And when I came to them 3 weeks later and I said, okay, everything is mastered now, now send me the split sheet. One of them gave it to me and I was like, okay, fantastic, great. Now we're able to send it out to
Hmm.
people. The other three people, they didn't do their split sheet. And then it became a huge argument amongst every group that didn't do it because they didn't decide on it at the beginning
Yeah.
as the one group did. And people were going back and forth going, well, I put this into it. I did that. I was the producer, so I should get a bigger
Yeah.
share. I was the singer, I should get a bigger share. Well, what about me? I put in the melodies. And I didn't want to enforce my will to tell them what to do, but at the end of the day, it became a situation where I had to do that because people after the work was done, they argued about their roles because they didn't establish a baseline at the beginning.
Yeah.
If you establish a baseline at the beginning, then at the end you can go, well, actually, I did do a little bit more here. And usually people will go, yeah, okay, why don't you get 5% more or something like that? And it's easier to do. But when you do something where you don't map this out at the beginning, by the end of it, everybody has ownership of what they did and they are all trying to get the maximum amount, and that makes it difficult and you never want to be in that position.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It should be agreed right at the beginning of the session.
And I'm giving you all the templates now. So this is for the sound recording. This is the link, it's in the chat. And then I'll give you the one for the composition. uh okay, bear with me.
Hmm.
And this is, and I know that this is such a basic thing to some of you here, but it's really important because if you don't start off with good paperwork, everything gets messed up. So those two documents are documents that you can use, that I've used and other people have used in order to make sure that these problems don't come up. So the second thing I wanted to talk about is work for hire documents. Work for hire, having a work for hire document is not necessary if you're doing something where everybody's in a band and they're collaborating, or everybody is, collaborating on a song and getting equal parts of it. But if you're bringing in somebody, and this is really, I think I'd focus more on it does happen with composition where I've had work for hires, but usually that's a special situation like writing for an advertisement. Um, but on the master side, it happens a lot where somebody will hire a singer or hire a saxophonist, whatever. They hire a session musician. And you could be somebody who's just a songwriter, not just, but only writes songs. And then you hire an entire group of people to produce, to sing, and to perform the music. And those agreements are typically, those people are typically hired for a fee. Now, what I have found in my experience is a lot of the time, people will hire someone, they'll pay thousands of dollars, and they won't sign any documentation with that person. and they won't even have an email exchange or even a text exchange. Because at least if you have that, you can establish that there is a relationship between money being spent and work being done. And that by itself shows that there is a work for hire agreement, on a basic level. You would be better served by having an actual work for hire agreement signed, which at the end of the day is not a big deal, because if you're paying somebody and you're saying to them, you're going to get this much money, you're going to do this task, it's like a consulting agreement. I do a consulting agreement with Disney to do something. I don't own part of Disney afterwards. They paid me a fee and that was the end of it. It's the same principle for a work for hire. And that said, though, if you do work for hires with people and you don't have paperwork or any information to back up that this person did not get a percentage of something, you open yourself up and everybody else who may use your music to a situation where that person who you might know was a work for hire comes back and says, wait, I was on that track, I want money. And at the end of the day, they're being on that track and you're not having documentation puts you in a very bad situation and puts everybody who used your music in a bad situation. And you want to avoid that in every way possible, because music supervisors, they certainly don't want that. They certainly don't want to be in that situation. And you want to make sure that everything that you do is very buttoned up in terms of how you hire people and how you have this documentation in case it's needed. So I will also give you a work for hire agreement link. I won't show it to you right now, but it's basically like a consulting agreement, and I'll give you a link for that you can use. But with that said, I'm going to ask you again, Merrick, when you have worked with musicians as a musician or in any other way, has this been an issue that's come up for you in dealing with, just in general with musicians?
Well, I used to work as a record music producer for because I ran small record label. It's 20 years ago. Work for hire is illegal in Europe, but we
Yes,
still,
yes, I
yeah,
know. You have to pay. Well, you can do a work for hire, but you have to pay people royalties.
yeah.
That's the
But maybe
difference.
not. But maybe not me. We have collecting management organizations for performing artists. So when I hire a guitar player for a song, when I'm artist, Marek Hojda is an artist, and I record album. I can have session musicians. I can pay him or her a fee. Let's, for instance, a guitar player or a drummer. But
Yeah,
then uh, within recording contract with the label, this person won't get any royalties from selling album like in the past, or from, but this person deserves royalties from broadcasters, for example, when the song is played by radio station, because I should register the song in collecting society for performing artists and declare who plays guitar, who plays drums, and then those people will be remunerated.
yeah. So this situation is different in Europe, but there are, I mean, the thing is, between you and I, there are work for hires, and what I mean
Mhm.
by that is someone in Europe will be paid to come in to sing or come in to play an instrument, but there will be some sort of remuneration in
Mhm.
royalties for that person. That's the
Yeah.
difference, is that you can't do what you do in the US, which is a buyout of that person's rights.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a different situation. And that's part of the reason I have you here, is to show people that there is a difference between doing business in different markets. Now let me take a
But
look at.
work for hire, it's not the same like buyout contract, because
No.
with buyout, I it mean when I sign buyout contract, it means that I will never get any royalties. But with
Exactly.
work for hire, it means that I sell my name. Nobody will claim it's Marek's song, for example. It's
Right.
songs of someone, but not mine, even if I composed it. So that's why this is illegal work for hire, because always composer creator should be mentioned,
Right. And that's the difference because in the US we don't have that.
because of the Berne Convention that was signed. Berne
Yeah.
Convention comes from the end of 19th century.
Yes, exactly. Which the US is not part of. Yeah. That's more of a European thing. But
Yeah,
yes, I do know about that, but I didn't have the clarity that you do on it. So that's
yeah.
really good for people to know. So Robin asked, if you have an agreed signed work for hire agreement in the day of sound exchange, what is best to put in the artist box? Robin, open up your mic. I think you mean in the metadata field, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, like if it's on disco.
Right. That is a good question. I mean, what have you been doing so far?
Sometimes we do featured with the artist. Sometimes we've done a band name. I know a lot of people do a band name. Like if it's a writer who hires a singer and they
I would generally do that, what you're doing. I mean, that makes sense to me. I would put the artist of the band name.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that makes sense.
that's exactly what I would do. The artist of the band name. Yeah. Let me see here. Okay.
And my other question was, years ago, somebody gave us a split sheet that I thought is good. It has two different boxes, one for name and one for likeness, because
Yeah.
sometimes people will say, no, you can't use my name, you can use this other name.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll say, well, you can use my name, but the other way around, because I'm, union off the card or whatever
Yeah.
situation they might have that they will approve one or the other.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, the work for hire agreements that I shared are very basic. The one that I shared is just very basic. But I think name and likeness boxes are definitely something that's good to have there, and I'll probably integrate that into mine. At the end of the day, I really haven't thought about putting people's name and likeness as a field into my work for hire because I basically looked at it from a transactional confirmation point of view outside of name and likeness allowance. That basically this was somebody who was a session player and that would be the beginning and the end of what they were doing. So, with that said, it is important for you to have those agreements. And now we've talked about split sheets, we've talked about rights of assignment, and we've talked about work for hire. So we'll put that to the side. And now I'm going to give you a brief presentation and talk through a couple of things because the next point is what is the information that music supervisors need in your metadata when it comes to rights clearance and why? And how does this help you? The last two things that we talked about are important, not because people will ask you for them immediately. Sometimes they will ask you for that information up front, but most of the time, if you're dealing with a music supervisor or a sync agent, they may or may not ask you for that information initially, but it will be something that it's something that you should have in the background because if they ask for it, you need to provide it. And I will guarantee you, if you're working on something that's major, like a trailer or an ad or something with a big budget, they're going to ask you for those things up front to confirm because there's more money, there's more money basically, and they want to make sure that they're not putting themselves at risk. Okay, so with that said, I wanted to get to a couple of things here, Merrick. You're still with me, right? That's good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so what I wanted to do with this presentation here, let me see if I could pull this up. Just bear with me. I have to do a couple of things here. And if anybody has any questions or anything up to this point, feel free to raise your hand and we'll take your questions. Okay, so this is going to be metadata 2. Okay. So basically, this part of the metadata goes past what we did last week where we were talking about describing things. Now we're talking about confirmation of payment. And this is one of the most important things in your metadata, you know, because I want to talk about this for a second, because a lot of the time when we are talking about metadata, you know, we're talking about the totality of it. We're talking about, you know, putting in descriptive tags, putting in your contact information, which are both very important, putting in tempo, putting in year of release, putting in the name of the artist. All of this stuff is really important, but the most important things that you can put into your metadata for a music supervisor are the ownership and rights information of the sound recordings. I mean, not the sound recordings, the composition and lyrics, excuse me, and the associated performance rights association. If that information is lacking in your metadata, then it's very likely that the music supervisor is not even going to listen to the music in most instances. That because they're going to look at this and they're going to go, this person doesn't understand where their, you know, performance rights organization is. They don't understand who, you know, how to put in their writer information, etc. So that's something that we want to avoid, and it's actually pretty simple. So let's go to this presentation that I put together here, and it's got a couple of things in it that I wanted to show you real quick, and I think could be relevant to you know, just in general to what you and I are talking about, Barrick. But yes, continue to share. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So I wanted to start off with something just to give you a you this first circle here, I'll read it to you. But basically, this was something I came up with a little while ago where I thought to myself, how does it actually work in a music supervisor's network and in their mind? Basically, there's three concentric circles, and I've worked like this, and everybody else I know works like this. Unfortunately, the first circle here, you can't really read it that well, but it's kind of metaphorical because it's the one that's the hardest to get into, so I'll read it to you. But this is the circle where 80% of the business gets done in music supervision. And this is the circle where there are trusted resources that people call upon on a regular basis. These are people that the music supervisor knows. They can be individual artists, sync agents, labels, publishers, managers, whoever it is. These are the people that they have worked with before and that they know. So these are the people that end up getting most of the briefs, most of the requests that happen. And most of the briefs that happen are not, you know, a one-page brief where they say, okay, I'm looking for music like this. This is the kind of stuff that I need. This is the deadline. Here's the references. That usually is not what's being sent out to people. What's usually sent out to someone is like, you know, somebody like Matt Biffa will get in touch with me, who's a music supervisor in the UK. He'll get in touch with me and he's like, hey mate, listen, I've got a real problem here trying to clear this Korean track, and I was wondering if you might know of any alternatives. That's the brief. And then from there, I'll go, well, that sounds great, Matt, but like, how much money do you want? How much money do you have? You know, what can you give me in terms of style, whatever? That's usually the back and forth that happens. And that's usually where a lot of things get done. So obviously you want to get yourself into this circle. And part of getting into that circle is making sure that you've got your metadata right. Because when somebody sees consistently that you've got decent music and that your metadata is on point, that will lead to them taking a chance on you. And if you can deliver something, even if they don't use it, that's correct, they're going to remember that. And they're going to remember what it is that you have, so that when they're searching on their hard drive or in their Disco account, you're going to come up as somebody who that they can do business with, and they'll see your music and go, aha, yes, this person actually has some music that has like a kind of a bossa nova influence, but it's also kind of grunge, and I'm actually looking for something like that, so let me get in touch with them. That's why the metadata is important, because when you're looking at this from the music supervision point of view, you're looking for people who you can trust over time. And the best way to get trusted over time, if somebody doesn't know you or refer you, is to consistently present music that consistently is presented professionally. So that's one of the ways you can get in that first circle. Another way is, of course, somebody suggests that you go in there, and that can help you, but you still have to have these fundamentals, or else you're probably not going to get suggested. And number two, the person you're being suggested to is going to look at this and go, well, it doesn't really look good. So they're going to already feel there's a little bit of risk. All right, so the second and third circles. The second circle is basically people who are referring other people into trusted sources that are referring people into that first circle. So basically, let's just say somebody's looking for music. Like I'm looking for music and I haven't found it in my group. Like I'm really having a problem trying to find an authentic Mongolian throat song that I could clear, and I need it for this commercial that I'm working on that has like this, thing in the mountains and horses and for a new perfume that ad. And I'm having real trouble trying to find somebody who can execute on this or license it. So I reach out to my friends, and one of them goes, "Oh, yeah, actually, I do know somebody who can do this kind of work or has this kind of music. Let me connect you to them." So then, when you get connected to that music supervisor, in this case, it'll be me. If you have all of your information correct, that gives me confidence in your ability to work with me. So, that gets you into the first circle pretty quickly. But that's the second circle of how people find music. The third circle is I haven't been able to find anything. And an example I can give you is somebody was looking for um, like a certain kind of like Chinese rock music from the 90s, and they couldn't find it anywhere. They couldn't find a label to give it to them. So then they said, okay, I'm going to just put out a brief to everybody that I know, that I've connected with or known, and see what comes up to me. Now, the reason I gave you this circle is because circle 3 is where most people who are not, working actively in music supervision, or working actively with a sync agent, or working actively with music supervisors, are going to end up getting briefs. So basically, this is where maybe, let's say, like 10 to 15% of the opportunities come up. So 80% of the opportunity is going to happen in circle 1 and circle 2, and about 20% in circle 3. So if you get involved from reference from a trusted resource, or you get involved from somebody contacting you directly, obviously there's a much better chance of you having your music connect to an opportunity. If it goes to the third level, now what happens is, instead of that music supervisor getting in touch with maybe 2 or 3 people, or getting references of 5 or 10 people, now they've put out a brief out to the world. So now what happens is that now you're competing with 1,000 people. And out of those 1,000 people, now there's lots of noise for the music supervisor, and they might get your music, they might not. You might get your music to them by the time that they've already found something. So this is really the way that it all really works. And I want to make sure with anything that we're telling you that we're getting into the first circle as quickly as possible. And the best way to do that is to, of course, get a reference from people, to have people that work with you, but to consistently present music professionally. And that means this type of metadata: ownership, writer's information, publisher information, PRO information. Okay, so with that said, Merrick, do you have anything to add to this?
Well, I can add that I love this presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I
it
think
means,
it's
yeah.
important. I think it's important to do, because like I was just on the phone a couple hours ago with a friend of mine who's like a partner with me on some business stuff. And he's a pretty well established guy and a good producer. And he was telling me, there's a lot of people that are saying, that this will get you a sync directly. This will get you a sync directly. And the truth is, there's nothing that's going to take you directly from 0 to 100. 0 to 100 only happens by going 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, sometimes 0.5%. And part of that process is making sure that you build a structure that is bulletproof in terms of professionalism. And that's what I was trying to emphasize with this slide. And that's what I'm trying to say when it comes to the metadata as we're talking about it today, when it comes to the detailing of ownership. Now, I wanted to take a look at something that you put here, Nico. And Nico, you and I need to speak on the phone, of course. But my stuff is way out in the hands of all sorts of soups and editors I've never met. Almost none of my syncs come from people I know personally, but I'm sure some of them recognize my name from repeated exposure. I just wish I lived in a place that was easier to network with the music industry. That way I could actually be in the music soup circles rather than just them seeing my stuff randomly. Well, I can tell you something. Getting into the circle of a music supervisor doesn't just happen by meeting them. Like, look, I am a big advocate of meeting people in person. Otherwise, I wouldn't take the time and energy I do to put together events. Events are really important. Meeting people in person is really important, but also having people who can represent you and also doing your own presentation of your music to people is an important way to get into the minds of people. People will get to know who you are. People will get to know that you have music that's available over time. And, Nico, I think that speaks, your getting sync speaks to that fact. It's just harder. And that's why I will emphasize even more that if you aren't meeting people in person on a regular basis, it's important to make sure that your music is presented as professionally as possible. So that's one thing I wanted to lay out here. Now, I've got one more slide before I talk about the things that you need to do in terms of the actual ownership information. The next thing here is I wanted to talk about how people actually get paid for a sync, because what we're talking about here is payment. And this is really important for people to know. And typically, this is how it happens in one way or another. It may be different if you're working in a country where there is what's called a blanket license, like in the UK, where you will get paid a percentage of the royalty. In the United States, which is what I'm breaking out now, and this happens in other countries too, but you will have a breakdown of an upfront payment of some type that will be the master fee and the publishing synchronization fee. So that's the fee for the master and the fee for the composition and lyrics. And this amount can change based on the market and the type of usage. And these kinds of syncs happen internationally. They don't just happen in the United States. There are syncs that happen in Poland, because I've worked with Polish music supervisors, I know this, where there's an upfront fee and there's a back-end fee. It's just that there are some countries where, like in the UK, if you're doing a broadcast just for the UK, you can do a blanket license. So theoretically, the BBC, not theoretically, the BBC can use the Rolling Stones for a production that's only in the UK. However, if they want to do a worldwide release, they have to do a license in this basis in order to secure the license for their project. And in advertising, if you're licensing something, you have to do an upfront payment. And then the royalties, it depends on the market. But this is the standard model where
Yeah.
basically, yeah, go ahead.
If I can add something,
Yes.
to have a sync agreement, and it's you need to have a placement in audiovisual work. That means that commercial or movies or trailers are audiovisual work. In television, public or commercial TV in Poland, you can use Rolling Stones music on this another program about schools, about cooking, about something. You don't need the song to get to be licensed. So this is the case. But for audiovisual work, you need to have license.
Exactly. So it changes from country to country. And in the United States, it doesn't matter unless you're doing like a news broadcast or an educational thing. You can use parts of a song for fair use in the United States. But generally in the United States, if you're using it in an audiovisual production of any type, you're going to pay an upfront fee and you're going to pay a royalty. That's typically how it works. So the upfront fees work as I mapped it out for the master license. And this says master license twice. Forgive me, I did this very quickly before we got online, but I'll fix it. The master license and the sync license for the publishing side are usually equal. They're not equal if you did a cover of a song. The publishing will always be more than the master costs will be, in like 99% of the cases, unless it's like, I'll just use the Rolling Stones again. The Rolling Stones are doing a cover of a song that was written by an unknown songwriter. Then the master is going to be more than the publishing. But generally, if somebody's doing a cover, then the publishing is going to be more than the master. But for most of these cases, if the total upfront sync fee is 10,000, it's going to be 50-50, what we call in the industry most favored nation, which means you get as much as the other, both sides get the same thing. So 5,000 for the master, 5,000 for the composition. And then on the royalty side, it's fairly simple. I'm not going to talk about what percentages the PROs pay out because they change based on the PRO and a lot of other dynamics. That's not a subject I want to get into today. But what I will say is that for the royalties that you get paid, whatever they are, there will be a writer share and there will be a publisher share. And those are usually equally divided. In fact, I mean, not usually, they're always equally divided. This is important for you to know because if you don't have your metadata correct, it's hard for any of us who are going to pay you to figure out like how we're going to pay you and who we're going to pay. So this is all pretty important stuff for you to know.
But
Now,
Mark, this shares 50% for writer share and 50% publishing share. It doesn't work like this in Poland.
tell us. Tell us.
It depends on the contract, my contract with the publisher, because when 50% is the highest share that are accepted by collecting societies in Europe. Collecting societies won't be accept the shares like 60% for publisher and 40% for writers, but it can be less for publisher. So it's very common in Europe where that very famous and successful composers have bigger negotiation power, so they can negotiate that. For example, I'm famous composer and I can give you as a publisher just only 20% and 80% will go to me. So when my song will be used by you as a music supervisor in audiovisual production, I will get 80% of sync royalties and you will get 20% as a publisher.
This is, and this can happen in the US market too. What I'm showing here is that the royalties typically are writer share and publisher share equally, but it can adjust depending on the power of the writer versus the publisher. So that's true, and it can go both ways. If you're somebody who's working with a major publisher and you don't have the power of, say, like Paul McCartney, then the publisher may get a greater share of that publishing. You'll always retain your writer share. So the publishing share is where it fluctuates. Yeah. Okay. And there was something that Robin brought up that I thought was really important, is that a lot of TV shows, and this especially goes true in the soap operas and reality, where they will ask you to give them the song with no upfront fee and just pay you on the royalties. And that does happen. I'm not a fan of it. I really try to keep people from doing that no matter what. I've dealt with this in my life where I've had situations where, like a reality TV show or a soap opera or something like that, was saying that they didn't want to pay an upfront fee for a song that I was representing or that, I was working with. And I just said to them point blank, like, no, you have to pay us some kind of upfront, you know. But library music's a different thing, Nico. I'm not talking about that. Library music is basically you put music into somebody's library, and then that library then puts everything into their sort of shell of all of the music that they have gone out and signed. And they can pay you maybe an upfront fee for being a part of the library. Sometimes they'll do that, sometimes they won't. And they'll just say, okay, we're just going to give you your writer's share, and we're going to take all of your publisher share, or we'll take part of your publishing share, and then we're going to put your music into our library. Then what they do with that library is then they go out to different companies, or if it's like an internal library, let's say at Apple or something. Um, when I say Apple, I mean like Apple TV. They might have an internal library, it might be an external library, but you're put inside of that. And then what happens is that a company will pay a fee to have the right to use all the songs in that library as much as they want to the library owner. So let's say if we're talking about Crucial Music, they'll go out and do a deal with maybe Disney, and Disney will pay 20, 30, 40, $50,000 for 1 year of total access to this library. And that, yes, exactly. You get a blanket license fee cut. That's exactly what happens. If somebody's using a piece of your music from the library, you get a cut of the blanket license fee if there's any upfront. Usually there's not, sometimes there is, that you will get, but you will get the writer's share, and depending on who the library is, you'll get part of the publishing share or none of the publishing share. But it's a different situation than a sync license from you directly. Or yes, exactly, working with agencies and agents is a much better way to do it, Nico, because you'll get paid more. That's the bottom line. Like, music libraries generally are going to pay you a very small upfront for the music. And if you want to be successful with library music queues and working with libraries, you're going to have to just work constantly to create music for them. And the other thing I'm going to say about that business, and I'll be very serious about this, look, we've really gone all over the place with this, but when it comes to music libraries, right now they are either trying to evolve or they're going to die, because a lot of the library music usage is usually lower level music usages. And I hate to say this, but I need to be honest with everybody. That is going to be replaced more and more. A lot of that is going to be replaced by AI and AI created music. And that sucks. But the bottom line is, it might not be Suno where there's a totally screwed up rights situation. And if you looked at the articles I wrote last week, I got into details of that. But, there might be Suno over here, which is unusable for sync. But there are companies like Beethoven and 11 Labs that have created solutions where they have trained their AI on music that they have licensed and that they've had permission to use to train the AI. And that's something that, moving forward, like a cheap license that would be from a library, is now going to be something that is going to be created by AI. In fact, I know this for a fact, not just because my friends and I are always talking about, yeah, like that $500 Verizon ad for that's going to be on for 3 days in Des Moines. They're not going to use a music queue from a library anymore. They're just going to use an AI queue. I actually know somebody who was competing for a local ad. I won't say where or who, but it was a local ad to have their music put into it, not for a lot of money. And then the producer came back and said, "Look, we're really sorry. We love your music, but at the end of the day, the brand came back to us and said, you know what, we had our producer create a piece of AI music. And that is what's going to happen with the lower level stuff. There's going to be more of that. The higher level stuff, like independent music, the stuff that sync agents want, it's going to be it's going to be even more attractive because that music is going to be seen as something that works with a creative purpose or works with a brand. And that's, your music here for the most part that has cachet for people that are doing productions. Like I can guarantee you, for example, somebody like Vince Gilligan, who did Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul and now does Plubris, he's never going to use AI music in his productions because he doesn't want to be seen as somebody who's doing low level stuff. If he's going to be using music that's not famous, he's going to be using independent music, and that goes for brands that don't want to be seen badly. And an example I can give you for that is I was just talking to a friend of mine a couple days ago, and he was like, Mark, I was at my gym and they had a playlist that I know is AI created music, and it really sucked. I'm really angry. And there's a lot of brands that don't want to have that perception. So they're not going to go down that path. So, my feeling is at the end of the day, creating good music will lead to good outcomes. But in order to have your music known and have it licensed, all of the stuff that we've been talking about has to be buttoned up. Okay, so let's get out of that tangent. Let's go back into just some of the things that I wanted to talk to you about today, and then we can, get into this. So here I took my friend Nahali's song Symbiotic. The song has been out for a couple of years, but everything that's here is what it should be. Now, you can go ahead into something like Apple Music, and you can edit your MP3s there. You can do it in Disco, which a lot of people will do, or you can do it with another MP3 editor. I really don't care which you use. I used to tell people everybody has to use Apple Music, but the reality is you can do this within Disco. You can do this within another MP3 editor. Like I think there's something called Music Brains out there I played with. It doesn't really matter. But, when you get into the heart of your MP3s, you've got this information here, Composer. Now, what I've found is that when people see this information, that they see this field Composer, sometimes they put a ton of information in here that shouldn't be in here. Like, what are the splits between each of the people? Is it 25? Is it 50? Is it 30? Whatever. For the purposes of sync, I don't care. We don't care about that. If we actually get to the point where we're going to do a deal with you, we are not going to start asking you who does what, who owns what. We need to know beforehand, okay, these are the four songwriters, these are the people, these are the PROs that they're attached to, so we know who we would be paying out the upfront and the royalties to. That's what we need to know. We don't need to know a bunch of other details here. And I have heard people talk about how you need to put promotional information in here or put in one stop in this field. Don't do that. No music supervisor wants that. Music supervisors want clean information in this field. And in this field, as I put it here, writer number one, PRO number one, writer number two, PRO number two, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And here in this example, you've got Lena, which is Nahali's actual name. You've got Till, Nico, and Alexander, who are her songwriters on this track.
Mark, don't you think that maybe API number will be also useful instead of affiliation to collecting society?
We don't need that. We don't need it for our purposes. You can put that into your comments, but we don't need that in order to clear a track or to license it. We don't need that information in the metadata. There's nothing wrong with putting it in the comments section, but here in the composer section, I just want this information. But if you want to put your IPI number or ISRC number in, it's better to be in the comments section.
Okay.
It makes it cleaner and easier for me to see what the situation is. Because if you're part of GEMA, then I know that you've got an IPI. I know you have ISRCs when I need them. And, you know, specifically for this, I know that you've got an IPI number. But right now, all I want to see here is what I showed here. And then the next thing is, and this is the one that I have a huge problem with, is grouping. So you have grouping here. It's a horrible name for what is publishing and publisher information. That's what should be there, not grouping. It should just say publisher, because that's what we put in there. And if you have a major publisher, let's say Lino was signed to Universal Music Deutschland, then it would say not Universal Music, excuse me, Universal Publishing Deutschland. It would go UPD, and it would have that in parentheses after that, UPD's PRO. And then the same for the rest of the people here. But in this case, all four of them are self-published. So they put their own names in there so that we know that the publishing goes to those four people. That publishing share is assigned to them. So then the PRO knows to pay them for the publishing share of their royalties. So what needs to be here is in the same order as the composer area, the name of the publisher, self-published in this case, but could be anything, and then the name of the PRO of the publisher. And then in order, the next person, the next person, the next person. And I've got to say, between all of us here, this is really stupid. And what I mean by that is that how would you know unless somebody told you that you have to do in the grouping publisher information, number one. And if you have multiple writers, you have to put the publisher information in sequence according to the writer, like writer one, writer two, publisher one, publisher two. How would you know this? I find it just, it boggles my mind that you're supposed to know that this is the nomenclature, this is the order that we use. Because if you get it wrong, if you mix the order of this up, let's say that all of these people were, you know, assigned to Sony, Universal, Cobalt, whatever, and you did the order wrong, this would cause complications later in the cue sheets when we're assigning royalties. So I wish there was a better system for this, but this is what we've got right now, and this is the way that it works. First writer, first publisher, second writer, second publisher, and on and on. So those are the two main things that I wanted to talk about there. And let's see, I put the IPI numbers and others in the notes for when I need later. Exactly, Robin. That's a good way of putting it. I was also saying that you should put, you can put them in the you can put them in the comments section as well, but I like to save the comments section information for descriptive tagging, but you could put it in there. There's nothing wrong with that. But at a minimum, you should have it in the notes section. Agreed. So they should change grouping name. Yes, I think that we're way overdue for an overhaul of the ID3 container, which is what we call where we put the metadata in technical terms, like, you know, right here. Disk number. Do we really need disk number? We don't. And I'll tell you something about this ID3 container, this like the fields that we have here. This was created in 1993. And this was created so that you could connect the information around the MP3s that were on a CD to the artist and all of the rest of the basic information. It wasn't created for the world that we live in today, and it really is due for an update. And I'm surprised that nobody's gotten their heads around this, but that is the situation that we're dealing with. So let me just take a look here. Okay, for grouping, writer name one is in the composer, and then for the next one it's published. For grouping, it's you don't put the writer name unless it's self-published. Okay, Daniel. So basically, if your publisher is Universal, you'll put Universal there. If your publisher is Cobalt, you put that there, and then you put the publisher of the PRO, and that's really important. So you put the PRO of the publisher. Excuse me, I got a little dyslexic there for a second. But to be clear, in the composer area, writer, then PRO in parentheses. That's simple. Grouping, publisher, then PRO of the publisher in parentheses. And if you are self-published, you put the writer name there. If it's an actual publisher, or if you have your own publishing company, you put that there, and then you put the PRO. And an example I can give you off the top of my head is if you look at, I don't know why Genesis came into my mind right now, but they did. Genesis used to have a publishing company, the band from the 70s and 80s, called Hit and Run Publishing. And that was, or Hit and Run Music, excuse me. And Hit and Run Music was the publishing company set up by Phil Collins, Mike Rutherford, and Tony Banks, the three songwriters. So down here in the publishing area for those three, you would have their publishing company that they set up. If they didn't set up their own publishing company, then you would have their names. And if they all had a direct relationship with, like, with Sony or with Warner Chappell or with Universal, that would be represented there. And I think I'm over explaining this, but on the other hand, the better I explain it, at the end of the day, the better that it resonates with people. So those are two very basic things, but by doing those two things the right way, you instantly look like a professional to every single music supervisor, every sync agent, and everybody else that's getting your music. It's so important. And I see this fail so many times. And it's just two areas of the metadata. So with that said, that is my presentation for today. It didn't get into a lot of details, but it got into two that I think are the most important. And I think at some point, maybe I'll do this next week. I'll go step by step through all of the areas of the metadata fields, just as a review for everybody, because I think it's important to do that. But I really wanted to cover this stuff while I was here with somebody from a PRO, because you and I have spoken about this stuff so much, Merrick, and everybody knows
Yeah.
it's super important. So let me see if there was anything else here. Change library to catalog. Yeah, I agree with you. And that's a worldwide thing, Robin. I think everybody uses catalog. I don't think there's any difference. We understand catalog. All right, everybody. So that was that for that. Does anybody have any questions or anything that they want to bring up? I'll be happy to field any questions or comments before we wind things up. Oh, and look at that. That's so funny. I was mentioning Cobalt. I just got an email from the manager of clearance and sync at Cobalt. Pretty funny. It's just like he must have entered my mind. But in any case, I hope that was helpful for everybody. And Merrick, do you have anything that you want to add?
Well, I'd like to thank you for having me, for inviting me, and for let me sharing some of my thoughts and advices to the people. I hope they will be useful for all of you. And I'm happy to see you again, Mark.
Absolutely. And Daniel, you had a really good question, because the comments section has a character limit of 255 characters. And I'll cover the comments section next week, because if you can, this is something that's really important. If you're in Disco and you put things in the comments area in Disco, I could put in, like, I'm in the middle of writing, like on the side, like a 10,000 word article, a really long article like you would see in the New Yorker magazine. I could cut and paste that into my comments section in Disco. I could. They allow me to do, you know, as long as I want. But out of that 10,000 characters, everything except for 255 characters will be cut off in your MP3 that you send out to outside of Disco. So you have to be really aware of this, that your limit inside of that ID3 tagging is 255 characters. So you really have to maximize them. And now I will bring up the screen that I was showing you again, because I want to show you something there. Let's go back to that. This right here, the comments section, okay? Look at that, I pulled it up. Here we go. So basically, this comment section here, I really take pains to put in the best information possible for the 255 characters that are here. And that starts with email address, phone number, clearability. Is it one stop? Is it easy clear? Is it something that is more complicated, which means I just leave that out? Are there samples? Is this a cover? You know, that's where that information should be. Then this next thing is it a female vocal? Is it a male vocal? What are some of the major instruments that are involved? This I put synth, but there could be more information there. But I wanted to really focus on the descriptive tagging on this. So fighting, demons, moving on, inner struggle, depression, melancholy, dance, soothing. And then RIYL, which is a term that I hate, and people that know me know I hate this, but it's a term that's used, which is an acronym for recommended if you like. So recommended if you like is basically something music supervisors will type in on a search. I would say sounds like, that's what I would prefer, but sometimes people use ALA. Most people at this stage use recommend RIYL, and there you can put, as I did, Lady Gaga, Muse, and then you can put other descriptive tagging, 80s, 90s, thoughtful driving, change, circles, dark, empowerment, whisper. All of that information is important because that information is directly relatable to its findability in an external drive or an internal drive or on a network. So it's important to keep in mind that when you are doing your comments, even if you're doing them in Disco and you have like a 10,000 word article in there, the first things that should be in that article are your contact information, the clearability, the vocals, if it's vocals, instrumental, if it's an instrumental, major instruments, and then descriptive tagging, what it sounds like, who it sounds like, if there's a band it sounds like, and then any other information in terms of descriptive tagging that you would want to put in there. And if you want to put your IPI number in there, you can do that too. So you see my presentation, not the comments section. The comments section was right at the bottom there where the arrow is. Can you see that? No? Wow, that's really screwy because I'm seeing something. That's messed up. Okay, so you see nothing now. After I talked through all of that, my God, I feel awful. Okay, so if I go to this, yeah, I see what you're saying. Give me a second. I've got to take this off. Very bad. Okay, now I understand why you were having problems. My apologies, everyone. There. Now, with any luck, now you can see what I'm talking. No. There you go. Now can you see what I'm talking about? There we go. After all that description, everybody, I feel so bad that you're just now seeing it because I really tried to give you a good breakdown, but you can see what I said there. Contact information, clearability, local information, instrumental information, and then descriptive tags and what the artist sounds like in terms of other groups or other artists. It's very important to keep that in mind. Good. And I'm so glad that you can see it now. My goodness. So what I'll do for everybody is when I do the next session, this is going to be the last session I do on metadata for a bit. We're going to shift to other subjects. But the next Friday session, I'm going to take everybody through all of the steps you need to do. And what I will do is instead of doing it on Apple Music, we'll go through doing it on Disco, because that's where I know a lot of people are going to be editing their metadata, and I want you to do it the right way. Now, you know, I personally love doing it through Apple Music, but I know in the real world, you may not do it the way I do it in terms of how I enter it. So we will do it by going through Disco, and that will be what we'll do next week. Okay, so there we go. So that really is the end of the presentation now. All right, so I'm going to give you a couple of links now. The first thing is I will send you all the deck that I created. So I will give that to you if you want to get like I'll put it up in the Sync Summit group. That's the best thing. That's the easiest thing. I'll put it in the Sync Summit group so you can get the link. Now, there's a couple of things here. The first thing is if you want to make a contribution, you don't have to, but this takes me a little time to do, and I'm always going to make sure, no matter what we do with Sync Summit, which is paid stuff, that the cafe is always free. So if you want to support it, you can support it. If you can't or you don't want to, that's your right. No judgment. That's totally cool. But there's the contribution link. You can do something or not. And then if you want to see what's coming up, we have some really cool conversations coming up. The next one is on Monday, and that's going to be with my buddy Alicia Outridge, who's an AI expert who used to be the chief tech officer and chief product officer at TuneCore. And she is a coder, and she also developed a lot of services for Meta and for AOL, and is really just a really, really great mentor when it comes to technology issues. Then the week after that, we're going to talk to my friend Benji Rogers, who is just incredible, who will talk about how he's built a system that is going to detect what Suno is using in terms of music, and then give us a path to getting money from it, which is going to be a really cool conversation. Then from there, our next session is going to be making contact with decision makers. So we'll talk about how you get in contact with people and best practices. And then we'll have a conversation with the CEO of Cynite, which is a company that allows you to find and enhance your metadata through a lot of science that they've built around it. He's a pretty cool guy, and it'll be a great conversation. So with that said, that's what's coming up. And if you want to check out anything else we're doing, you know where we are, obviously, syncsummit.com. I want to thank you. Thank you again. I want to thank you, first of all, Merrick, because I know it's getting late where you are right now, and I'm sure that you and your wife would like to do what most people do on a Friday in the summer after work. So just chill out and relax.
Yeah, it's 9 p.m. in Poland. So,
It's time to go, Mark. It's time to go. So yeah, it's time to go. So I'll let you go. And as for everybody else, I hope you have a great rest of day. And I really look forward to seeing you in the next session. And if you need anything, I'm here for you. You know how to get a hold of me. Take care. Bye, everybody.
take
Bye.
care. Thank you.
Thanks.